Alright, Bushafo Mamina Makwaba, Eba Ghana Politics Avenue. Ahana open all the trending political stories in Ghana unsa bekano. Then the Bushna story the Bremeyo for Atawons and Semia and Yugusu Edi Hunkomo because Nyampa 20th of this month, Ena Obeko Court, Akoyi Nwano, say or Sefata, say Manitina on my US and answer as a CSI in the New Ghana, Mani Beijing Sinfobian. Now we na Akoba say yes, say lawyers Akuffo damfo ni lawyers akese akohan mo United States former US attorney John Ashcroft ni na akohan mo nyina say yes o ma assessing options na hu say na asmo de court na nyede na kiane ki oyede ya be extradition na when you say ne lawyer for former US enam gabi asarochi da akoso afre Ghana US ambassador some that to the name say can you frata a really so Ghana na osuro se ebia oba kwan ya yedi be faso na ebia na ni anje won na se akoha no into osle na obetima guarantee se oba ye mfa ne mfa ohaw ne amane ne atiti bia na eye kwadu edabo na obeyi won moma ye nkonyi kuti ensema ekoso eni nchimunchichimu ye ba didi obia ye de be mam I Ghana police have no go video in here.
Dominic Ayine told us that he had spoken to a former U.S. Attorney General who spoke as representing Ofori together with two other lawyers, including the one who has spoken publicly that we all know. And they were seeking and asking for assurances that he will be giving the treatment, that should be accorded him if he, cooperated, and they were assured.
Samson, just to take it from where you're landing so I don't lose my train of thoughts, is that is a concession that they've run out of strategy to now come in. Because, I don't blame lawyers at all when it comes to issues like this and when it comes to representation of high-profile cases, especially in matters of extradition or outside the jurisdiction. They will hold on to any form of strategy for their client not to come in. And at the point where the ex-US Attorney General start to say, okay, well, can you give us assurances that his human rights would be intact, his XYZ would be okay, they're throwing in the towel. But once that will happen, either than that, they would have still gone on a long haul of strategy to protect this case as much as they could. Right, that said, it is a very interesting thing. I'll say it's a mixed feeling.
That's small bit. Yeah. Just a little legal joke.
Okay.
We say that when the law is on your side, you bank on the law.
Yes.
When the facts are on your side, you bank on the facts.
Yes.
When both are not, bank on the table.
Yes. And that's what is happening. But now they can't keep banging on the table, so they have to go into diplomacy. So what is happening in this case that makes it very interesting? For me, it's one of mixed feeling. But I don't see embarrassment as one of the key elements of the mixed feeling that we have as far as this case is concerned. For me, it is one, I don't know what to say if I come across either Mrs. Sremsai or Ayine, because it's a masterclass of strategy they've displayed. Masterclass in every sense of it. Because you'd see, the base of the hawks and the base of the political, doing something right, but they had their eyes on the ball, which they never dropped at any point. No one saw this coming. Absolutely. And if you look at extradition cases, the Guptas of South Africa are still in Dubai, right? Driving to Abu Dhabi to swear affidavits at the South African consulate and going back to Dubai to chill out for a long case, including the Zuma regime, because they believe they were part of it. This is even creating a diplomatic row between Pretoria and Abu Dhabi because they are unable to extradite them. It tells you how complex extradition cases can be. So the two, the Attorney General and the Deputy, realizing the complexity, had other ways of doing it. That's why I call it a masterclass. There should be a case study on how they get this after all of this is done. So now, what happened is, if you realize that as the case went on, right, let's also not forget that bar Professor, the late long-serving finance minister, Kwesi Boche, Ofori is probably the longest-serving finance minister.
That's right.
And that's very important. And important for the context of this discussion. He's held our purse in both prudential, fiduciary, and other responsibilities for such a very long time, right? So if this is happening, it means that it's a very, very high-profile case. That said, he's exhibited an act of bad faith Why do I say this? You took permission from the Chief of Staff early January when your party had lost power. And if whatever information is out there is accurate, between the 2nd and 4th, so it means the new government had not come in. So if a Chief of Staff is granting you powers under the state, permission to go for health or medical care, it is only right that you show good faith, right, in the permission that has been granted you. You say, okay, well, if the FBI, I mean, the US sometimes, they advertise human rights, etc. If they deem you fit to put you in detention, it means you are fit to be on the next flight to Ghana, right? So you had expired that stay, and that is something we are still not contextualizing within this. So if he left Ghana and then he's back, he's been asked to come. If I were him, voluntarily, just come. Or say, look, I'm taking a break to come to see this. But what happened is, Manasseh, I think, put up a Facebook post earlier. Most people did not pay attention to it. Detailing the visas, his immigration status in terms of visas he has in his possession and their expiration periods. He flew a kite, very interesting kite. So what would have happened is, and you'd see here his lawyers has been very deliberate in actually making every move they made. You say you're in the US for medical care, right? Your visa expires very soon, but you have a Canadian or possibly a UK visa, right? In their mind, this is me thinking. They could have said hypothetically that, oh, if he tried to move to the UK, even though he has a 9-year visa, right, he's only mandated by the immigration rules to be domiciled or to be there for a period of 6 months and would have to exit to go back in. So if his movement become a bit erratic, it shows that you are evading justice and not medical care.
But which, as we know the facts, he actually did. After the first 6 months or so in the US,
yes,
he went to the UK.
Yes.
Because you had to go.
You had to go out and
then come back in.
So
and then he came back in.
He came back in.
Yeah. But the Interpol red notice had then been issued, which meant he couldn't move again. So if he moved, there was a fear that he'd be arrested anywhere he was going.
Chances are that triggered the red alert to be issued. Because if it didn't trigger it, it means that he would have that freedom of hopping around countries, right, just to meet immigration regulations and not to be in Ghana. You are fit to travel to the UK, but not fit to come to Ghana. Right. So we are not politicizing this at all, but this is where I think that commendation should be given where it ought to be given. Because if the Attorney General and the Deputy did not work, right, because look, how they Chinese walled this to such an extent that nobody knew what was happening is very interesting.
But again, then,
right. So
if the Interpol red notice had also not been issued, then there would have been room and allowance to go to London and return, or go to the next other country. Canadian passport he has, he would have gone back.
Until last week, was the public aware that his visa was revoked?
No.
Has his lawyers challenged that his visa was not revoked? No. So you see how interesting it is and how it's playing out. But you see, another interesting feature in this extradition case that is worthy of commendation, not just on the part of the Office of the Attorney General and Minister of Justice, but also on the government, the President and Vice President, the Mahama Opoku-Agyeman administration, is that fairness, right? Non-political interference. You see institutions working. Sedna Tamaklo was not tried under an NDC government.
Correct.
She was tried under an MPP government. It is taking her own party's Attorney General to call for her extradition.
The extradition, as I know it, and Chairboy will join us.
Yeah.
He was the one who had a brief on it.
Yes.
It had already been done, but it had to be followed up.
Well,
and I think that's what.
Well, but even following up on it is good faith in terms of continuity of government, because I mean, people have accused the Attorney General of discontinuing some cases. So if he had actually wanted, he would say, okay, then if it is anything to go by, as I don't have the facts in studio, then you have said, okay, well, I'll discontinue this as well. But he went on, and I've had a success just in under 1 year of the government. You know, excluding the vetting periods and all of that, his work as serious.
He said he could have said he would discontinue.
No,
this, because this one you can't discontinue.
No, when you say discontinue,
the trial has completed. No, he's been convicted and sentenced.
No. I'm talking about the extradition process.
Okay.
That
continue
the former
with that
Attorney
process.
General said had triggered. So he could have decided to be, indifferent about it, but he pursued it as much as he's pursuing it over reality. So there's no case of political witch hunt. If you weigh the two. Right, Sedna's own party, right?
There has been a lot of pressure. Yeah. Once Ofori was being sought for or after, then the NPP consistently said, why are you looking to extradite Ofori when there is somebody that you are supposed to extradite you haven't done?
You know our politics. Regardless, that's why I say where commendation ought to be given, it has to be.
Right. Okay, so you hold it there for me. Let me go to Alfred Cheyebua. Thanks for joining us.
Thank you. Good morning, Samson.
Great. You and I have had discussions about Sedina Tameklo in the past, and the fact that you had triggered the process, and yet, very little was being done to consummate it. I suppose today you're excited about this, right?
Samson, definitely I'm excited because the work that we commenced while in office has actually come to fruition. After her conviction, we went back to the court for a warrant for her arrest. Subsequent to that, we began the extradition process, and in July 2024, everything was forwarded to the relevant authorities for the process to commence in the U.S. So upon exiting office in January 2025, it was my expectation that the process would follow through. And thankfully now, we are told that Sedina has been arrested by the U.S. authorities awaiting her extradition.
Questions have also been asked, why did it take you so long after her conviction to begin the extradition process?
Something. She was convicted in 2024. I don't know the exact date. Right after her conviction, we began the process. And those who have worked the age, they know the steps which you can have such a matter expedited in another county. And so we activated the office through the DPP's office. At the end of the day, everything was done. I remember I had an interview somewhere in August 2024, where I made the public know that we had been able to locate where Sedina was living, and she was being monitored by the U.S. authorities, and that very soon she will be arrested, and then this of extradition definitely begin. But now we are told that she has been arrested, detained. It is my expectation that the extradition process will go through the U.S. and then to be brought back to Ghana to serve a sentence.
Can you also confirm to us that once she's brought to Ghana, she gets to the airport, what happens? She goes home?
The moment she gets to the airport, there is a warrant for her commitment to prison. She ought to be arrested by the security agencies and right away into prison custody. No two ways about that.
We have people who have had warrants on their heads, come through the airport, walk through their homes, go to do processes in different courts and walk out of this country. So please, how can you be so sure that she will come to the airport, get arrested, and through to the Insawam?
Unless there is state complicity, if the state decides that it's not going to activate agents to monitor and arrest her at the airport, then that's where we will be. But if the state decides to activate whatever it's supposed to do, then from the moment she lands in Accra, she ought to be picked up and be sent to prison custody. But the space is being monitored. The moment that is completed in the U.S., Ghanaians will also be watching to see what happens when he gets to Ghana.
She was convicted, and it's been over a year since her conviction and sentence. The sentence begins from the very day of the conviction. So when she comes, if she does, and she's taken to Insawam, is she going to start fresh? Is that how does it work?
Something I know that's quite contentious. I've listened to arguments from lawyers that if you look at section 294, if I'm not mistaken, conviction or sentence starts from the day that it's pronounced. But that matters so far as she was convicted and sentenced on a certain date, her sentence will start from that date. But in looking at statute and other provisions in an act, you have to look at the intention behind such provisions. If you read that provision so carefully, you realize that it assumes that the moment that person is convicted, the person is under the custody of the court and will begin his or her sentence. And so it will also involve the judiciary at a point in time. If President argues that her conviction, after her conviction, she spent some years outside prison, other count, the state also say no. Let's go and then carry the based on this section in the criminal act. Speaking for myself, the intention behind that section is that at the time that that person is sentenced, that person should be under the custody or in the custody of the court. For that matter, we don't have the latitude of going back home. But if you are home, for example, if she spends 9 years in the US and is extradited to Ghana, are we going to say that she will come and spend about 6 months and they will be set free? That will be absurd. That's the reason why I think it will require some judicial intervention at a point in time to know the true meaning of that section in Act 30.
The chief operating officer of the Maslog that she worked with, who was also tried and convicted to 5 years, do you know if he's in fact in prison? Because I'm hearing that just a while ago that he must have gotten some bail and is challenging the appeal. What do you know? Challenging the conviction.
When he was convicted, he filed an appeal.
Right.
And so before we left office, we're looking at how those processes will be done in court and for his appeal to be heard. I only read within the week that the Supreme Court has granted him bail pending appeal. I just read it. And so the presumption is that since he's granted bail, he should be home now. But that doesn't mean that the conviction of that gentleman has been set aside. But just that the Supreme Court has granted him bail from what I read from the newspapers.
Yeah, so all this hue and cry about bring her home, and she comes home, she's also entitled. She could go seek appeal, file an appeal. Oh, time may have run out, but she may go for extension of time to file the appeal, file an appeal, and then seek for bail and could really be at home and not hiding like she was in the US.
I mean, it's so surprising if she's granted bail by any court in Ghana. I'm not a court. I'm not about conviction about it. Bail. Because as you know, if you were granted bail in a case and you jump that bail, by law, you are not entitled to any bail again.
Right.
She was granted bail by the court. She stopped permission of the court to travel to the US for medical reasons. She has jumped bail. In fact, her surety, I think, Mr. Alex Mood, had to go through because we're trying to also extradite the bond against him.
That's right.
And so now that he's now arrested in the US, if she comes to Ghana, by law, she's not entitled to bail. As for her right to appeal, that is her right. If the court looks through and realizes that maybe her conviction was wrong or something, definitely she will be acquitted on the charge. But we are keenly watching the space because there are people who also have some kind of conspiracy and arrest, but I don't want to believe in conspiracy.
Right.
They are keenly watching the space to what will happen.
Right. So let me find out from Bobby about this, the two of you, the lawyers, if you have any different views on that. Bobby, what Afrechia Yeboah is saying, do you agree with him that such a person will not be entitled to bail any further, having once breached the bail bond? And I remember that she put people like Alex Mould in a very difficult position. I remember Beatrice Ananfield, who was then acting as lawyer for Alex Mould, seeking to get Alex out of that complex web.
Well, Samson, bail, the grant of bail or otherwise is at the discretion of a court. And one of the conditions for the grant of bail is for you to show if you are likely to breach the bail bond. And if there's evidence that you have breached the bail bond once, I think that one would think that in exercise of the law as we know it and as we have practiced it, judges will find it very difficult to give you another bite at the cherry, except
Ghana Politics Avenue, open the trending political stories in Ghana. I am on Sabekan. Story at the Bremwin, to any Jew, bell like in Washama, who was on the Nafi. Comment section one of me who are drinking, CBA in Bidiano Baba, near Church, Yarding, Alpha, video in Yashim. Now, if you send any Diga Batchen, is your best source or best subscribe to channel. Also, subscribe, we are Afi, I don't know notification, but not Udunsa, but see any subsequent videos be able to be answered to makan in terms of the in the Ghanaian political highway. Yadamu Lamas is a major brain, high Ghana politics, Akroma, Yadamu Lamas, Mumbai.